And welcome to another Biddle on Saturday, April 11th, 2020. This is the regular edition of Biddle, and we are officially open for business. How's everybody doing?
We're doing
Doing great.
fine.
Excellent, thank you.
Fine, very good.
Doing
Very
Thank
good.
you.
All right, so this week we are trying out Q4OS, and that was suggested to us by an email asking us to try this out. So I did get an update on. So we talked about this on Biddle Europe, and we did a couple people's thoughts on it, but we had a pretty big discussion on the best specifics we could give on checking this out with the limited amount of information we had. So I did get an update in between that show and this show, and basically, this is for the IT department in the Jamaican government. So they are asking us to check this out and see if this is basically a viable option.
That's interesting.
Basically, they want our opinions. They have reached out to Q4OS for the best value for support. And the reason that they're looking at Q4OS to begin with is because they're trying to keep the price down because of, the situation that we're in, the world situation that we're in. Budget is a major issue for them as well, just like everybody else right now. So they're looking for the best deal. And I guess not just the cheapest deal, but the best deal all around. So would this basically work for them? And obviously, they're going to make their own decision based on the parameters that they have, how many people they have. They do have a complete IT department, but they're just looking for what we think of it. So that's basically the update that I have. That's the information that I can give you. So looking at it from that standpoint of would you put this on your system as a business, looking at it with the idea of having the support from Q4OS in the background. And that's basically the lens we want to look at it through. So I did install it, and I didn't have no issues installing it. And like I said in the Biddle Europe, the first thing that came up for me, and this probably has nothing to do with their scenario because I'm sure they're not going to have 4K monitors there. But I have a 4K monitor on the screen, and it was the first distro that I ever seen pop up a box, even on the live USB, that said, hey, you got a 4K screen. Do you want to enable scaling? And it allowed me to scale it right there live on the USB, and then when you install it afterwards as well. I thought that was great, and I think that should be in every distro. As far
Can I
as...
just ask you one?
Go ahead, Colin, go ahead.
Just ask you one thing. Which desktop did you install, Rocco?
The Trinity desktop.
Oh, the Trinity. Okay.
Yep. I plan on putting the Plasma version on here just to see what it differs, because I'm going to guess that the Trinity desktop for me is the no-go as far as, because it's old. It's kind of like older and stuff. It uses Conqueror for the file manager, Conqueror for the browser and everything. So I would be more keen to use the actual Plasma version, but from a company standpoint, it may be a completely different situation. So I'm going to let everybody else go, and I'll just throw my thoughts in between. So Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, so I installed both versions in a virtual machine. And let me comment on Trinity first. So even though that's not a mainstream thing, I think, and it's probably not something that I would want to have for a long-term support sort of thing. And it's starting to get a little long in the tooth, and it's probably got some vulnerabilities that aren't going to get fixed anytime soon. So that would concern me from a enterprise sort of standpoint. But I will say that the theming that they've done with Trinity actually makes it look fairly Plasma-like. With as much as they can possibly, put, on that. So from that standpoint, you could go from one to the other probably and still feel pretty comfortable.
Well,
so that-
right now, Dan, they're using Windows XP computers.
right.
So they're looking to see, they're looking to make that jump. So is that a
It's not it wouldn't be a terrible leap, I don't think. And certainly from that standpoint, the user interface is probably going to be a little more comfortable with Trinity. So that's kind of it could be a progressive path there. You could go to Trinity for a little while and get people a little more comfortable, and then ease your way into something like Plasma. Plasma, obviously, from a support standpoint, might be a bit of a challenge, in the sense that there are a lot of knobs and levers that you can pull and turn, right? And so that could get out of hand potentially. However, though, I mean, it does give you the flexibility to get things set really, the way you want them exactly, and just kind of walk away from it. Hopefully, nobody's touching anything. And it allows you the customizability to get it so that it could be comfortable, probably. Yeah, and I guess it comes down to the applications that you would need. Thinking about it from a business standpoint, there's obviously a lot of open source tools that you could use, especially for Office Suite and that sort of thing. And I think having the Debian backing gives you a pretty good you know repository to pull from. So I think that's a good choice. Beyond that, I'd have to think about it a little bit and let you know whether that would be appropriate for an enterprise sort of situation. I didn't have any problems installing or anything, so that went smooth. And I would expect anybody else to have the same sort of experience with that. I do know that they're using an older version of Calamares, but it worked fine for what they were. It probably worked fine. So that's my take on it.
Well, to narrow it down a little bit, when I said about the Jamaican government, it's obviously not the whole Jamaican government. It is a office inside the Jamaican government. So I think
Right.
it's the immigration office. So it's definitely not thousands and thousands of employees, but it is. I don't have the exact numbers on how many it is, but yeah. So I guess we'll continue on. Eric,
All right.
we're skipping Eric because he's not back yet.
Sorry, I need a few minutes.
Okay, that's fine. I believe that says you're the food bank guy, Peter.
That's me.
All right. So, what do you think about Q4OS?
For me. So, I installed the KDE Plasma version on my Alienware laptop. That part of it is fine. Plasma on top of Debian, no real problems. I did test Flatpak and such. But being me, I also took the choice that it gave me to add an additional desktop environment. So I installed Budgie at the same time.
Let me
And that
guess.
is
It didn't end well, did it?
That is an absolute nightmare. It didn't install much of GTK. It's basically the Budgie part is fine, but there's no wallpaper. You can select wallpaper, but no wallpaper comes up. The theming is atrocious. You have to add GNOME tweaks to even get theming to work. Anyway, there's a whole lot more, but why it was an option, I don't know. So
right. Well,
but the Plasma side is fine.
Well, they gave. I guess maybe I don't know. Maybe they want to give you as many options as possible.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best options. But,
As I said, Budgie is Budgie, but the GTK wasn't there.
Yeah, that's pretty integral for a Budgie desktop is to have GTK. So,
yeah, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting experiment. Yeah.
It is fun running Budgie, having Dolphin File Manager.
But I can say that I have never had a good experience when I mixed KDE with
Yeah.
GNOME or a GNOME-based desktop
I
environment.
gave the report
together.
because the option was there and I took it. So,
No, that's a good test, and that's probably something, if you were looking at it from an enterprise point of view, you'd want to be able to disable
Yeah.
that sort of option.
yeah. Now, that's, since you're talking about business, since this is a business option, probably like our workplace where all our desktops and laptops are imaged.
Right.
I'd like this. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that theirs would be the same. It'd be imaged, it'd be locked down, it'd be preset software.
Well, see, that's the thing. We're trying it in two different ways. We're trying it one in trying out Q4OS, and two, trying it out for their scenarios. It's two different things. You're right. They're never going to have that option available to the people that are using the computers. Their IT department will just make an image and just install it for them, and everything will be fine.
So that's it.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Penguin, how are you this evening?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. What do you think of Q4OS?
Actually, I thought it was pretty cool. I've installed both in a VM, but I messed around mostly with the Plasma this week. I kind of focused on the Plasma, and I thought there are a couple things I thought were interesting about the Plasma version. Is one, one of its default browsers is Chrome. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but some people who are open source advocates might. That might be a turnoff to them that they're including Chrome as the browser, but that's easily switched. And they also have Conqueror there as the browser as well. But other than that, it's a good minimal install. I did the full install, and it's still pretty minimal. Dolphin actually worked kind of iffy for me actually inside of it. I don't know what was going on, but it kept on displaying some sort of QT error for me. I like the fact that it also identified VirtualBox. It actually went and prompted me to install the VBox and guest editions right out of the box. That was the first thing it told me to do. Now, I didn't try to install other desktop environments like Spider did, because I just didn't. But that almost sounds like a broken meta package. So you might want to take a look into that. But I thought it was actually pretty good for that, for at least a minimal desktop environment. Other than that weird problem I had with Dolphin, it worked just fine.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I will say, being Debian, it's obviously going to have older versions of things. So, maybe, Qt version versus Dolphin version sort of thing might be a bit of an issue, potentially, for whatever you were trying to do there. So,
yeah.
Gotcha. All right, Tony. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And what do you think of Q4OS?
Yeah, it's not too bad actually. I done the KDE version. It seems to work okay, but I'm not probably the right person to judge whether it would be useful in a business scenario or not. But it certainly works okay as a normal desktop. So I don't see any reason why, if it's locked down by their IT department when they install it, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work okay. Software-wise, I had no problems installing anything. You've got two software centers. You've got the standard Discover, and you've also got Synaptic. So nearly everything I would imagine you'd want would be available. So it should be quite easy for them to set up and install. So yeah, I don't think it'll be a problem.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And I had referred to that earlier as well, where it was kind of like, you probably don't want to make a purchasing decision based off of our, our judgment here, because we're going to look at the desktop, we're going to look at the functionality, and it's probably more important. It's good to hear that they're talking to them already, but I mean, that's probably more the important part, right? Are they giving them the support they need, or do they have the?
Yeah, they'll definitely need support.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think that's kind of where we landed earlier, and it's still interesting to get the feedback and see people who've tried Trinity and tried other desktops. Peter, it's really interesting that you tried something completely off the wall there. So, and I think that's the kind of feedback maybe they were looking for.
Well, hopefully we can help.
Exactly. All right. So I see Mr. Dreaming Wolf. Hey, Dave, how you doing, man?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Did you get a chance to try it?
Actually, I did, and I find it rather ironic that Rocco found out that it was going to a section of government for their IT department, because when I got installed and running, I was thinking, well, it's not my cup of tea. But I was looking at it, I was thinking, new Linux users, not generic new users, but computer literate users, like an IT department. And I thought it would be geared well towards a business where you could set up a configuration and just image it out to multiple machines. It installed fine for me. The only issue I came across was a niggle, not a problem. It was when I was setting up my Wi-Fi. It said, select which one you want, and I selected it. And then instead of connect and save, which I hit the first time, you have to hit next to get to the page to put in what kind of security, which I appreciate them actually giving you the options. And then the page after that, to put in the actual password or shared key. But once I got that in, it connected flawlessly. Nothing carried over from the live environment to the install. So I had to do it all again once I got it installed, but it set up fine. It took my setup script just fine, set everything up. It being Debian, it's got older versions of stuff than I like to use, but it was good. It was solid. I wasn't able to break it, which I consider a very good selling point for something that's going to be in use, that you need to keep going, like a government office. So yeah, while it's not for me, I had no issues with it. It looked nice. I installed the Trinity desktop. It would take a couple days for me to wrap my head around the way the menus are set up and where they have stuff stored, but it looked good. I did appreciate that in the menu in the Trinity desktop, a lot of the programs, you get to the program and it has the button to launch the program, and right below it, the button to uninstall it. So the stuff that I installed through their software center all had that uninstall button, so that I didn't have to go back to the software center if I wanted to get rid of something, just if I wanted to add something new.
What did you think of that software installer dialogue that came up? Very, very Windows-esque.
Yes. And it was kind of basic, but then again, I almost never use a GUI software center. Right. I do everything through the command line, and there was nothing that I couldn't get to through the command line. So I didn't spend a lot of time in the software center. Just when I first set it up and that window screen popped up at the beginning, put in the multimedia codecs, and it says, do you want to install software? I just clicked on that, went through and added the basic stuff like Firefox and Thunderbird. But yeah, it was everything worked fine. I thought, looking at it, that it was geared towards a business environment rather than just generic desktop use.
And you could see, if they're coming from XP, how it would be very familiar.
Yes. And like I said, a beginning Linux person, no, but an experienced computer user coming over from Windows, I don't think would have any problem at all transitioning into Q4 OS.
You mentioned... Sorry, go ahead, Rocco.
Just to be clear, it isn't for the IT department. It is for the immigration office. I was just mentioning they have an IT department. there's that.
Yeah, but they would have people there walking them through.
Yes.
But if they are used to, if the people in the immigration department have been using computers for a while and have anything beyond, go on the internet to check email skills, then they're not going to have a problem transitioning, especially if they have an IT department, there to back them up, and Q4OS crew to ask questions of if they get stuck with something.
You mentioned newer software because it's Debian. I noticed that on the beta, I ran an update and it actually has snapd on there. So they're supporting snap packages, which
I never use snap packages or flat
well, I'm
packs.
just saying, I mean, if you were in that position where you're rolling it out and needed a newer version of something, it might likely be in Snap. So
that would, yeah. And in that case, yeah, it's even better. But
So,
like I said, not my cup of tea, but very, very good for what they are looking for.
I have to ask, did anybody, I mean, I know I mentioned that they use XP, but did anybody actually try the theme switcher in Q4OS?
the layout?
They have a XP looking theme in Q4OS. You switch to it, and it is fantastic. As far as coming from XP, going to this, there would be absolutely no problem with using it.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I'll have to take a look at it.
Yeah, I saw that was an option. I didn't try it either.
I've tried it in the past. I haven't tried it on this release.
Gotcha. All right, Dave.
Is that available? Is that available only on Trinity desktop or Plasma as well?
I don't know. I only installed the Trinity.
Yeah, me
That's a good
too,
question.
Colin. Haven't
Yeah.
tried it.
I think
on
it's
Plasma.
only
I only
available
picked
on
Trinity.
Trinity.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
don't
think
think
it's-
it's on Plasma.
Well, see, I picked Trinity because I wanted to actually go down memory lane to see KD 3.5, but it doesn't look like KD 3.5 used to look. So it's kind of went on its own path now. So it's like it is based off that, but it's not that anymore.
Someone mentioned on the the Europe edition the startup sound, and that sound, if you remember it from all those years ago, it definitely brings back the memory of like KD3 starting up.
It
Anyway.
does, yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks for that, Dave. Colin, good to see you.
Yes, thank you. Good to see you guys as well. I installed it.
There you go.
And that's it.
And that's it. That's fantastic, Colin.
I saw you were doing some Ubuntu testing. So
I had a look at the latest Ubuntu. I just wanted to check that out. I will have a look at Q4OS this week. I should have a bit. I've got 4 days off. This is my third day into 4 days, I think. So it'll give me an opportunity to have a look at it. I've installed the Plasma, but I might actually reinstall it and go for the Trinity, because I think that's probably what they'd be looking at. Going on what Rocco is saying, they probably want a little bit of that familiarity of XP, and that probably, I think, has that, whereas the Plasma would just probably be the Plasma. I know you used to be able to go from Trinity to Plasma a little while ago, but now they offer Plasma and Trinity as separate downloads on their website, which I don't think they never used to do. So that's changed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it used to be just Trinity, and you used to be able to install the Plasma desktop a little while ago when I last tried it.
And I think you still can from that desktop. Rocco, you said it has an odd names like desktop profile or desktop something.
Desktop profiler.
Desktop profiler, yeah.
Yeah, I think in there you can actually, if you're on Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned
you
mentioned Trinity being the more familiar. If you download the version 4 beta, it's only Plasma. So it makes me think that maybe they're not going to move forward with Trinity.
Right.
I don't know that for sure, but
yeah, that's a question that we'd have to ask the Q4OS guys. Dan Kelly, sir, how are you?
You're muted, Dan.
You're on mute, Dan.
I'm really happy to see you back. We missed you last week.
My poor mouse, the button died.
Telling you, if you'd have just listened to me, Dan, you would still have your mouse living.
You wouldn't
Hashtag
believe
save the
how
mice. Single
you
click.
wouldn't believe how tiny the switches are inside that mouse. They're not very durable.
Well, I hope for the next mouse sake that you start using single click.
New mouse.
Okay, anyway, Q4OS,
All
Dan.
right. Okay. I opted for the Trinity version, the live disk one, and I put it on the USB and I booted from it. And right off the bat, it asked me if I wanted to install the NVIDIA drivers.
Yes.
So I clicked on it and it went and did its thing. And then it asked me to reboot the machine. So I reboot the machine and booted back onto the live USB stick. And it asked me if I wanted to install the NVIDIA drivers again.
Yes. Probably because the USB is not persistent and it's not going to keep those changes.
Yeah, I kind of figured that too. So I gave up on it because I knew I was going to put it on some real hardware. And when I did, it kind of did the same thing with the real hardware, except it stuck. With that said, the desktop and the monitors, after it was installed and everything, and even with the live USB stick, the monitors just everything laid out perfectly. I didn't have to do much tweaking in that area. I put the NVIDIA drivers in, like I said, did when I put it on real hardware. There are some issues with the NVIDIA drivers. The NVIDIA X server display config file, if you set any of the force compositing pipeline check boxes, you will lose the monitor that you actually checked those for after you save that configuration. So, and I found the drivers, if you disturb the settings too much, you will have issues. It comes with 4.18 in NVIDIA drivers, like all Debians do. NeoFetch. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you try upgrading it to 440?
No, because I really don't need 440.
Well, maybe upgrading it might fix that. That was my question. That's why I was asking right there.
Well, I had a whole bunch of other issues too as I go down the list. I mean, I could go back and change them, but when I opened the terminal, it said that NeoFetch wasn't found or wasn't configured or something like that, because like it was in the batch RC file, but there was no NeoFetch installed. So I tried to find it in Synaptic Package Manager and it didn't find the NeoFetch. So I added it through the command line. It gave me the Debian one, not the Q4OS one. So I got hung up with that. The picture viewer that comes with the Trinity suite. The picture viewer, if you want to view pictures, the arrow button won't let you go forward. You open, you see one picture, you either go backwards and it'll get you out to the main menu, out to the file manager, up the same way. But if you go forward, it will not proceed to the next picture. Now the menu at the bottom on the panel, I grabbed a hold of the corner at the very top left of it. It's got like a little knurl thing there to resize it. And I grabbed that and poof, the whole menu went down to about a ½ inch wide. You could hardly see anything. And I'm sticking there and I could get about 3 letters out of anything I wanted to look at. And that was about it. I fumbled with that for a while. If I needed to reboot the machine, I had to use the terminal and the sudo reboot to reboot it to do it anything else. But once I was digging around in the settings, I did find a menu setting where it said Trinity Classic, and I clicked on that and it reset it to something different, but I could at least read it of normal size. Firefox, everybody knows I use the tar BZ2 type package that goes from one distro to another without any installation. Copy and paste issues. I have loads of them. The terminal doesn't copy and paste with anything else in the system. I've also had problems copying and pasting files from one hard drive to the hard drive the OS is on. It just refused to do it. And one of the biggest problems I ran into was sound issues. The sound you're talking about, you hear when you guys log on, I'm not getting it. And I opened the mixer they provide at the bottom of it, and there's a big rack of stuff. And I tried fiddling with that, and nothing seemed to work. The only place I actually got any sound was with VLC and a video out of my video stash, video file. I got to work a couple times with that. It seems that their mixer does not equally coincide with the ALSA mixer either. If you push on their mixer for rear speakers or rear outlet, it actually, and it's the other way around for the front with the Trinity one. So at that point, I put it away because I was starting to get aggravated, and because it was like everything I touched, something had an issue I had to overcome.
Well, that's a good report, Dan. We definitely don't want to
if there's
sugarcoat
something I'm
things.
doing, if there's something I'm doing wrong, tell me, because I don't know everything. I just dive into these things and take notes as I'm playing with them.
Yep.
And some issues don't even get notes.
Well, I don't know if anybody saw the File Manager Crusader in there. So retro, so awesome.
But I can't say would I use it. I can't use it. It don't work for me. Now, some of the issues like with the sound might be my hardware. I have a high-end Sound Blaster audio card in my machine. It works with everything else, but it doesn't work with this distro.
All right.
So
thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Electron, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. What's going on?
Not too much. I did get a chance to test the Q4OS. I actually tested all. Let's see. I tested the Plasma, or at least played around with the Plasma Trinity versions for the current release, but also I was somewhat curious and tested the 4.0 testing. And like Eric said, they only have the Plasma version of that. Let's see. I initially tried the newest laptop I've got, the Dell XPS 13 9300. It was a no-go, kind of similar to Linux Mint Debian Edition that we tried last week. I did get further than that, though. It was kind of interesting, even though they're same kernel based, based on both based on Debian, same kernel. It did get a little further. I just had a little bit of trouble with video, and again, I just didn't want to spend the time to troubleshoot it. But I did put it on an older HP Spectre 2-in-1 laptop. Worked fine. All the hardware was recognized. And then that was the Plasma edition for the current version, the Centaurus. The other two, the Trinity and the 4.0 Plasma, I tested in a VirtualBox. I think to Dan's point about the NVIDIA being, not being persistent, which makes sense, but it's kind of strange that they give you that option. And honestly, it may have been too late at night when I was installing it. But I had a similar issue in that I put the live USB in, I boot it up, and I get the window right front and center that has the, it's got like the 6 options. First one being the desktop profiler. So I run the desktop profiler thinking that I'm installing it. And it goes through its thing. And I was like, that's weird. It never asked me what hard drive to put it on or anything like that. So I rebooted it and I was like, wait, what's going on? And then I was like, oh, I got to install it from the icon on the desktop. I think it's strange that they don't just put that in that menu. And like I say, normally I would notice that and I would install it properly, but it's just, I don't know. It just seemed a little wonky that you have all those options that you would usually want to do after you have it installed, but they're kind of right front and center before you install it. they're obviously trying to make it look like Windows. I'm not a fan, but I can definitely see what they're going for. I think, and like you say, this area, the Jamaican government, if they're replacing Windows XP PCs, they're probably the targeted customer for this kind of thing. For me personally, if I was looking for a Debian distribution, I would probably prefer the Linux Mint Debian edition that we tried. But with what they're offering, with I'm assuming support that they're offering with it, I can definitely see where this would be, especially if they're price competitive with others that offer support with their distros. I could definitely see where they're looking at them. I think though it's a little odd. You search the website for Q4OS, to me it just seems kind of like a small time, almost hobbyist distribution. There's no professional, contact us here. I don't know. It just seems the contact info was too elusive. It just seemed a little, uh, uh, for what they're going for, I would expect it to be a little more professional. So I don't know. I think that's an improvement they can make. But again, it's not. I think Dreaming Wolf said it wasn't for him. It's not for me. But I can definitely see the use case for it. I played around with it for a few hours. I wasn't really able to break it. Seems to be stable. So, for the right target customer, I can definitely see that this would be a good option.
Really good info, man. Really good info.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
Simon, good evening.
Good evening to you.
And how are you? And what did you think of Q4OS?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Dan. My experience with Q4OS was a very positive one, actually. I'm proud to report. I installed it on actual hardware. I took the 32-bit version of Trinity, and I installed it on a over decade-old compact Presario CQ62 laptop. I installed it in a dual boot alongside Peppermint OS, and it's still booted up and running now, and it is completely flawless. It detected all the hardware out of the box. Wi-Fi works, graphics and sound work just fine. And it's been a really, really usable and functionable OS, and works great on that machine. This afternoon, I turned to that machine to watch YouTube and do some other tasks, because my main production machine was tied up doing some rendering, and I could watch full screen YouTube videos on it just fine. And yeah, it's fantastic, and I've decided that I'm actually going to keep it on there. I think its use case would be ideal. I think it'd be ideal for the Jamaican government office in this case, especially if they're using slightly lower budget hardware or whatever. I think it'll still perform as well as it should do.
Yeah, that makes a good point. I mean, they probably are using older hardware if they're running XP. And just the fact that you were able to watch YouTube videos and whatnot, that's a pretty good test. I mean, that usually stresses things out.
Absolutely.
Well.
I mean, this is a single core 32-bit machine, so it's no powerhouse at all, but it's been booted up all week, and I mean, I've been running OpenGL screensavers and the like on it, and it's been fantastic.
Cool.
I had I love music. I listen to a lot of music. I was able to install Alan Pope's NC Spot in the terminal and listen to Spotify on it as well. That was fantastic. Nice. Yeah, my experience of it's been really good, and I'm going to leave it on that machine and keep using it because it's great. I love it. I did try the KDE Plasma version in a VM on this machine, but I shall give my thoughts on that next week.
All right. Thank you very much. Good test. Thomas, good evening. How art thou?
I'm doing all right. How's my audio? I had to tinker with it a little bit.
It might be a little high, but yeah, just a little bit.
I turned it down. Okay. So I just now was testing it out while everybody else is talking. So fresh experience here. I think it's no secret that I'm not a Qt fan or a KDE fan, but I went ahead and gave KDE a try. I think for the people who are looking at using this, it would probably be really good. There are a few apps in there that I don't think they would really need if you go with the I don't know what the exact wording Q4 OS uses, but it's the option, the desktop profiler, where it installs the Office suite and all the other stuff. I don't understand why they have two file managers. I think that's going to get confusing for newer users.
Welcome
I
to
think they
KDE
need
3.5.
I think they need to remove one or the other, preferably Conqueror, because just loading that up, I was a little bit confused because that does not look like your typical file manager. It looks more like an FTP client.
Yeah. Yeah, one of them works and the other one doesn't work so hot when you're going from drive to drive.
Yeah. I was trying it out in VirtualBox, and I heard somebody else mentioning that it detected that it is running in VirtualBox and all that, and I got the same thing. The only issue I had with that was when I connected the VirtualBox guest editions, like it told me to do, it didn't see them. I don't think that's going to be an issue for the people in the government working with this, but that is something that you should probably keep in mind if they're going to be testing it themselves. Otherwise, it's not bad. I probably wouldn't have suggested using this. I probably would have suggested using Linux Mint or Linux Mint Debian Edition, one of those two. But if this is what they feel like is best for them, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work, other than, there's a few apps here and there you probably want to remove before you get done switching them over from XP, but it's light years better than an XP just due to the simple fact that it's not Windows and it's still supported. So yeah, not my thing, but I think for this use case, it'd probably work out decently.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Thomas. Barbara. Oh, you're muted.
I know. Okay. I actually did install it on this T420.
Do you realize that it wasn't Ubuntu Mate?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally.
All right. And you installed it anyway.
I installed it anyway, just, I don't know, because I'm going nuts being home, talking to the dog who doesn't even bother to answer me anymore.
That's great. Lockdown turned Barb into a distro hopper.
Yeah, well, not really, because I am not using that right now. I just wanted to see what it was like. And it's interesting now that I know that it's what the audience is for this particular, for this particular thing. I'm installing it on a 10-year-old machine. So that is perfect. It installed very easily. I do agree they should have had an option in the installer that had install Q4 OS instead of having to go all the way through, and it loads up, and then you finally notice it in the upper left corner. That type of thing. So I installed it. I did use the Plasma version because I couldn't get the Trinity version to download today. It was taking so long, but I had downloaded the Plasma version last Saturday when we were discussing it. So anyway, I installed it, and then I said, ick, Plasma. Now, suppose, I don't like Plasma, so it's just a personal thing. And I thought, well, there's supposed to be a way you can add other desktops. So I went through and I figured it out, and I installed the Mate desktop, and then I rebooted it. And surprise, surprise, once I made sure that this is something that's a little different than what I'm used to, because I'm used to Ubuntu. In Ubuntu, if you want to use a different desktop, you just change it right where your password is, type thing. Here, it was in a lower left corner. I thought that was kind of weird, but who am I? I was just going by what I'm used to. So I ended up installing it and running Mate, and it saw all my basic configuration and setup that I had before. The only thing I have to do is install back some of those programs using Synaptic Package Manager. And so far it's been running very, very well. And I think for the audience what did you say? Was it immigration or customs or whomever? For if they're going from XP to this, I think it would work very, very well, whatever desktop they chose. And the only thing that I'm not sure and I'm playing around with is how do you add additional desktops? It shouldn't just be one time and that's it. There's got to be, I just have to go poke around and find it. Other than that, so far, it seems to be, my sound is working very well, but this is a 10-year-old machine. It installed it on the drive that I wanted it to, because I have two drives in this machine. And it's working. I don't see where it'd be a problem. And since it's the 418 kernel, it's going to be pretty stable at this point. So I could see, them finding what they wanted. It might be fine for them.
Barbara, the way you add extra desktops is probably the only way is to the terminal. And installing.
Okay, because initially they have that, when you're installing it, they have an option. And I just installed Mate and nothing else besides KDE.
Yeah, so you probably just have to go into the terminal and pull it down.
Barbara, if you want to do additional desktops, you can open up the desktop profiler.
Okay.
In the welcome screen, and up at the top right corner, you'll see that you can choose the desktop environment you want to pick.
Oh, okay.
And then you can choose whether you want the full-featured, full-blown desktop or just a minimal install.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's what I think I was looking for then, was the welcome screen, because I usually get rid of that. Do I want to keep it? No. I mean, I just don't have it load automatically.
So, Barb, we'll get to hear about Mate next week?
I think so. So far, it's working.
Good.
I mean, I don't know if it's got all the same cool features that it does in Ubuntu, but we'll see how it goes. Normally,
Debian just works.
Yes.
For some reason, this version just don't like me.
Well, you're not using an old enough machine, probably.
Yeah, that's probably the case, because I do have it on my main machine that's similar to Eric's, except I have that high-end Sound Blaster card, and I do have my motherboard audio turned off.
Yeah. So it just may not like your hardware.
Yeah, and I'm guessing if they are using reusing machines that have XP on them now, they're plenty old. So that won't be a problem. All right. Thanks, Barb.
You're welcome.
All right. Bill, are you there, sir?
I'm here. We're good to go.
All right. Did you get a chance to test or no? You've been busy.
You can just continue, sir.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, Explorer, good to see you.
Good to see you too. For me, it was a quick, simple install of the KDE version on a VM. It even knew it was a VM and recommended installing the VM tools for it. So I went through that and didn't have any issues. I liked that it had message bubbles that told you what the setup was doing at the time. It was something different, but I do recommend a progress bar as a good idea. I don't normally use a software center, so from the command line, I tested installing apps using apt, installed deb packages, and was able to install Flatpak. After doing so, I installed Spotify, Flatpak, and successfully ran it. Being on a Debian base is a plus for me, as I love Debian's reliability and stability. And overall, I think it might be able to be used as a solid minimal distribution for business use. And if Q4OS offers good support, that's a plus.
Explorer, did you prepare notes?
Yep.
I could tell.
Hey, I think we all have notes somewhere.
Good stuff.
Thanks.
I see Larry is here, and welcome to BDLL, Larry.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Do you have notes on Q4OS, sir? I love it. So let's go.
I can't turn the
pages. I started a trend.
I told Eric last Sunday, I was like Dan Kelly. I made notes, man.
Do it.
And I'm not knocking you, Dan.
See, Dan, you've set a standard here, obviously.
No, I always make notes.
I forget.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it for a government, but they have to make it for the people using it. If the people using it aren't happy, then I feel for them. Worked in places where they make changes, they go off of office or something like that, and people just yell and scream. So as long as they can get the, if they're using web apps or anything like that, or any kind of their own software that'll work on it, they should be fine. I installed the Trinity version of it, and I installed the full package and everything, and it seemed to work all right. It was Debian with the KDE, like everybody's saying. As Tony mentioned, it had Synaptics on it, which I really like Synaptics. It's got the also their own software store. The Synaptics on my old Acer Aspire did the touchpad, didn't have the software drivers. When I started looking around for those, they were saying they're not available, but I imagine they're not going to have laptops, or if they do, maybe they'll have that cured. Played around with a lot of things. I really didn't have any problems. I got into the console, installed NeoFetch, and then hit nano NeoFetch, or excuse me, nano.bashrc, and had the weirdest looking nano I've ever seen. It took me a little bit to get out of that, but I got out of that. NeoFetch ran, as I think Dan said, it was running the Debian NeoFetch. I even got into the console and played with the preferences and see if I could change the colors, or it even had an opacity where you could change the opacity, but that was all locked down. You couldn't do anything. It was just locked down, didn't matter what you changed it to. So I played around with it for a couple hours and went back to the welcome screen, or whatever they call it, and installed Cinnamon. Cinnamon worked great. I could theme it out. You couldn't theme Trinity anyway, except for changing the wallpaper, or moving the panel over, and it moved around like a window taskbar. But the Cinnamon, you could do about anything you wanted to do with it. It ran a 3.8, something like that, version of Cinnamon, where I think on my Arch it's 4.8. I think my Debian SID just went up to 4.8 this week on Cinnamon. But and after that, I installed Ubuntu Monte 20.04. The end.
Nice.
Did you say that you had a problem with the Wi-Fi code?
No, touchpad.
Oh, the touchpad.
It wouldn't let me. I could tap, but I couldn't two-finger scroll.
Oh, that's you can enable that two-finger scrolling in the settings.
No, it said that the drivers weren't loaded. I tried it and did a little
Then
troubleshooting, and
then that would be the kernel then that they use.
yeah, okay. Yeah, it was 4.19, whatever the Debian is running.
That's what they use.
All right, thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. Vince, how are you, sir?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Rocco. How you going? Geez, this Zoom thing with where it shows your own user as the top left is really throwing me off. So I didn't realize it was my turn. Does anyone else have the same problem? Okay, so just to get on with it, yeah, with Q4S, I installed the Trinity version on my testing laptop. And interestingly, Larry, I had the same issue with the scrolling with the touchpad. I think I'm not quite sure if it's a kernel or if it's just Trinity not surfacing the settings. I haven't had time to go into editing any files to see if I can get that to work, or loading any modules to get that to work. I had a couple of other little issues, like, for example, what was it? My multimedia keys didn't work on my laptop. I found it really cute, the theming and how Windows like it was, and like Eric was saying, the install software data dialog box, how much that reminds you of a Windows installer. I just saw one little problem with that though, and that is if some new user saw that, they might think that they could go out to the web and go and download some random .exe file and think that they can install that. And I can see some people getting frustrated that they wouldn't be able to. But then again, that could be a security feature in itself, because you can't install .exes. I kind of now then want to touch on the use case that the email said about being used for a government department. And or even a business enterprise scenario. And I thought to myself, I'd have three considerations for that. Number one being that the biggest factor would have to be support, especially where downtime of your machines would be a very, very, very big problem, and getting that fixed and back up and running. And on a slight sort of tangent to that, maybe even familiarity of the IT department guys with the OS in terms of just setting it up and the day-to-day issues where they might not even need to call on the Q4OS support. And also whether the applications they need are available in Linux at all. And this is me coming from the experience myself of having deployed Linux in our little small business that we have. I put it on about a half dozen machines. Now, I went with Linux Mint in our case because that was what I was most familiar with. And I knew that I would be the one to support it because, I mean, we have IT consultants that come in, but they specifically said to me that even though a few of them actually use Linux themselves personally, they don't officially support it. They wouldn't install it or put it in our business machines because they just couldn't spare the time to actually support the different system as well. And so I support our own machines at work, leaning heavily on the Mint community. And so that's definitely a very big consideration for them, I'd say. Some other options that I had considered were, of course, Ubuntu and Zorin OS, especially with Zorin having this Zorin grid thing that I think Eric brought up in the Eurobittle. That's a very interesting little development that they've got going. It would be very difficult to know exactly what type of applications that this immigration department want to be using the Q4OS is for. So they'd really have to get someone in to either show them, or they themselves, the IT guys, would really have to test out the distro a lot and see if they can get everything they need up and running. Overall, I've only spent a little bit of time with Q4OS, but in my mind, there's just a few too many little niggles that would need to be sorted out before I'd go recommending deploying this in an enterprise environment. But this is maybe something that these guys could sort out with the Q4OS devs. You never know.
Right. Well, I know that the IT department is already looking, so they must have some idea of what applications they need, and must know already that what they need can be found on Linux. Otherwise, I don't think they'd be checking into it as much as they are. Right. So, but they are familiar with that end of it, and they're looking. They're already doing their own research as far as into this. I guess we're just giving extra opinions on it. So, very nice.
Yeah. I could see it being on a short list for sure, and so comfortable. It needs to be comfortable for the people to use, and so transitioning to Trinity Desktop could possibly do that for them. So I can see why. All right, thanks, Vince. Appreciate it. Stephen, good evening, and how are you?
Hey, Dan, how are you? Hey, Rocco.
Well.
Steven, what's up, brother?
Oh, not much. Q4OS, I don't have a whole lot to add to what everybody else said here and on Middle Europe earlier. I would say one cool thing that I did notice was the totally automated install option, where you can just click a button and it virtually does the entire install. I thought that was kind of neat, kind of unique. I thought that, you have to pick the packages afterward, like whether you want to do full or minimal, and then enter a password, and basically it's done. So that was pretty cool. I've never been a big KDE person. I'm not now, and was not in KDE 3.5 days. So this isn't something that I would use necessarily, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not necessarily my cup of tea. In regards to it being deployed in an environment, in a business environment, I kind of echo what I've heard some of the others say in terms of just the impression that I got looking at the website. It didn't look like, it's not somebody who gave me the impression that they would be like a Red Hat or somebody who would necessarily give me confidence from a business perspective in terms of getting support. It looks like a very small operation. Then nothing necessarily wrong with that, but for a government department, that might not be. There may be better options.
Well, I think price also has, a play in the whole idea of where they're going to get support from. So they may be a small outfit. Again, we would have to, like, if I was doing this, I would have to look into, hey, how many employees does Q4S have? How many people are working on the distro and all this stuff in order to make that decision. But yeah, it does seem like it's a small operation, man.
But I would say even just things like Dan mentioned, the NeoFetch wasn't even customized for Q4OS. They still left the Debian NeoFetch in. The little things like that and make it look particularly small. I mean, smaller than some of these other distros that have small teams. Just an observation.
Good point.
Yep, it is a good point. But
on the other hand, I mean, the users, are they going to be running NeoFetch? I mean, the target user?
Probably not.
Right.
Just to point out, the OS itself, even if you go into other tools, it does say it's just Debian busted. None of it says Q4OS.
Right. So it's just the little things there, but yep, I get it. All right, Dave Jones. Good evening.
Hi everyone. How are you doing?
Doing well. And what do you think of Q4OS?
I had mixed feelings about it. It was very nostalgic with the look and feel. Very Windows 98 and XP. I had downloaded and installed the Trinity desktop. It definitely looks like it's made for older hardware. And I didn't get a chance to look at Plasma, so I don't know how it looked that way, but my feeling was that it was made for older hardware. And also, I think with it trying to look like XP, it's if the users are moving from XP and possibly using this, I can actually see how there'd be less resistance because it's going to be more in their comfort zone with the way it looks and feels. I did notice an interesting thing about it when I was in the live environment. I don't know if anybody else caught this, but while it was installing and I was waiting for it to go through, I had opened up a Conqueror for the web browser, and I get a little pop-up box that said, "Oh, we're glad to see that you're using our browser, but if you want a nice modern feel, why don't you try using Chrome?" on it. So I thought that was interesting on it.
Yep.
But that's about it. I'm gonna be looking at the Plasma version during this week so I can compare it with Trinity.
Excellent. Dave, this is like what, week 3, week 4 for you?
Yeah.
Love
awesome.
it. Yeah. Great to see you.
Found
Well,
a home.
and we have a new person tonight. Hey Dale, how are you tonight? Oh.
Unmute.
There you go.
My audio okay?
Yeah, you're fine. You're tiny bit loud, so just don't yell at us.
Oh, I can just go into the whatever Solus is calling this menu here to lower my microphone.
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, you sound great.
All right.
Did you get a chance to try it out?
Well, actually, I was looking for a replacement last summer, end of last summer, because I had been using Debian for several years and wanted to try something different because I had tried KDE Plasma on my desktop and I wanted to try something different on my T460 on my ThinkPad. So I tried MX and then I went to a Q4OS, and I wanted to try the Trinity because I wanted to see how much it looked like the old KDE3 type XP experience, and that brought back a lot of memories. Some of them not good memories because I've been doing this since 1995, so the old x86 config and
Yeah,
having to put in your monitor timings and the frequencies and stuff like that. So
And getting
Don't get it wrong.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I almost blew up a monitor the first time I set up Xorg or X386 at the time, because I saw all the squiggly lines and I'm like, why is my monitor doing that? And all of a sudden I'm like, then I started smelling the blue smoke.
Ooh.
So I turned the monitor off and had to go into level 3 to go into the command prompt and change it. But anyways, I digress. As far as Trinity marketed for business, I think it's good to have a Qt option against GNOME when you would have for Red Hat. And the only thing I find a problem is when I was looking at their website when I installed this, because my memory is kind of foggy because I did this back in like September, October timeframe, so I'm trying to remember the details of it. And I didn't have a chance to try it again on a live CD or a live USB stick. The documentation on the website, you can tell they're focused on Trinity because all their documentation is based on going into the control panel under this category to do this function. But what I found interesting is every other thing listed on there is terminal commands. And that's where I see sort of a problem, where I guess this would be like the IT people needing to know how to do this. But it just seems kind of interesting that all the information they have for documentation, none of it is on the Plasma side, which is what I used, because I've used Plasma up until, I'm not going to try to go back, but it was more of a combination of starting on GNOME, then going to Plasma, and then go in it because GNOME was crashing on things. Then Plasma would still crash with the desktop where we'd load it automatically. You wouldn't have to type start X again. And so I went to XFCE. So I went back to, like I said, KDE Neon with Plasma, and I've been in love with 5 ever since. With the exception on my T460, I'm running Solus, Solus Bungee. So, but I just think I don't want to call it a mistake of them not incorporating any Plasma instructions, but I don't know. I just think the command line issue is going to be an IT issue with them using that. Because I can't see a corporate user saying, well, my sound doesn't work. Well, that's easy. Just go and type in, sudo app install pulse audio, yada, 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 yada. So as far as the Plasma side goes, I didn't have a problem with it. The theming was a little bland for my taste. So, but I did have the same as Dave Dreaming Wolf. I did have the same problem with the Wi-Fi, where you had to click the extra next button to tell it what security measure you're using on that access point. That was a little bit of an odd thing, but overall, I can see this being used in a business environment, but I think narrowly focusing on Trinity is, I don't want to call it a mistake, but I don't see a problem with them including Plasma with this, because businesses don't care about what it looks like. They just want it functionality wise. But I think as far as changing things in the desktop and the GUI itself is easier with the Plasma than it is with the Trinity. And that's just my opinion.
Thank you very much, Dale. I appreciate it. All right, so we have a couple people left, but we're already over the hour. Does anybody have it? We'll have next week, so I will make sure you guys who are here this week get in next week. Unless there's somebody here that is not going to be here next week or has something short, we're probably going to end Q4OS there. So Chicken, Esnick, Steve, Paul, Big Pod, do you guys have anything short you want to add, or do you want to wait till next week, or what?
Yeah. I'm cool.
I'll
Thanks.
add it works great on the Raspberry Pi.
Next week
Working?
is fine.
Even off the USB.
Nice.
I like cheese.
All right. All right. So, with that, we're going to end the conversation on Q4OS for this week. We're going to continue trying it out. I don't know. I just found this XP look changer thingy, or this change, the look changer. So I just changed it to the XP look, and I actually like that. It's really nostalgic looking. So, but I am going to install the Plasma version for this week and test it out and see what's going on with it. But those are our opinions. Hopefully they will be helpful, and we'll come back next week and we'll talk about it again. All right. So this past week, and we did talk about it on Biddle Europe, but this past week was Ubuntu test week, and I do want to personally thank everybody who went out there and tested the Ubuntu flavors of any kind. Whether you just tested it, whether you just tried it, or whether you're reporting bugs, either way, it is very appreciated by all of the people behind the Dan. Is it not appreciated?
Oh, absolutely. Love to see the reports come in. But no, it's good. We can't fix the problems that we don't know about. So definitely appreciate it.
Yep. Bill, I'm calling on you. Bill, Earth the Bill.
I'm here. I just had to unmute myself and undo things. Sorry, because I'm testing things. I want to thank everyone that tested, and you didn't just help us. Just remember that there's a couple remixes that are trying to get flavor status. They were in there, and they were in there doing a lot of stuff. Josh, who's not been here for a while, but has been part of Biddle, is trying to do the cinnamon remix, and people were testing those, and that's great. And just don't stop testing, because testing week is over. Dailies are going to start spinning up again. There's not going to be massive changes, but we still need people to test all the way up until Thursday, the 23rd.
Absolutely. I will say, I know there was some stuff today that transitioned, and it may have a bigger impact for the Qt environments, but yeah, that's why we need testing, because things are, bug fixes are going in and things are transitioning, and yeah, stuff all the time.
So
I was using the Mate version all week and on one machine that I use a lot, and I had no problems.
It's good.
And I got all my software, everything is in there. It's working fine for me so far.
I also, when I was testing Ubuntu Mate, I noticed there were some improvements in terms of accessibility as well. Because I know that's kind of one thing that Ubuntu Mate has always been really good at, is the accessibility side of things. But I noticed the addition of, I'm not sure, it was like a magnifier of some sort, or
I think that was a magnifier built by Stuart Langridge.
Yeah, that got introduced in 1910, and it's called Magnus. So everybody's talked about Mate, so I can just ease into this. So Martin Wimpress has been doing some live streams, and I encourage you to, and I'll put the link in the YouTube chat, to subscribe and ring the bell so he gets subscribers. But he didn't pay me to say that. But one of the great things is you can watch him, and he did a live stream last night where he hit some bug fixes that made some changes for the brisk menu. There's been some bugs that have been going on for a long time, and you actually can see he had to go through, and so to do this fix, he had to get this launchpad bug because feature freeze has happened. So he explained how he had to justify making these changes. And it gives you a great insight into what goes on in what's going on today in the distros and what feature freeze means. So I'll get that link, but please don't stop testing, and please subscribe to Martin's channel.
But I think Bill, there's one other thing that I want to mention about his streams. While he was doing it, he was asking people about if they want to get involved in development in some way. And he went so far as to say, "Hey, DM me on Twitter, and I'll get you started on wherever you can help out." And I thought that was so awesome.
And I can say the same for us too. Certainly, if something you want to get into, we have all sorts of different skill levels working, and we can absolutely find something. So, reach out. We aren't big teams, but we'll certainly guide you with whatever you want to work on.
So last year, Ubuntu redid their website, and we just did a relaunch of our website. And one of the things you'll find on both of those are sections of how to get involved. And that's one of the things that we kind of realized was a weak point. That what do I do when I want to get involved? I don't know. There's no information. So we've done some of that, and Ubuntu has done a great job on their entire website is awesome. Their documentation is awesome. So the stuff is out there, and you can always ping me in Telegram if you have a question. It doesn't have to be Mate related. I know Dan is so available and is so out helping. Dan he is an amazing person and needs to get more credit. But I know you can hit him up to it. Please do. Yeah. I'd be more than happy to help you, even if you're going to do something crazy like run, KDE Neon or Plasma or Ubuntu or any of those other weird things that are out there. Be happy to help you get started.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm going back to a point that Bill made about Martin's stream about how it's starting. You have to justify the bug fixes that you're pushing, and put that in there. And there's a reason we need the fixes that go in to be quality fixes that have been tested, because time is getting short. So we really want to make sure that whatever gets introduced has been vetted, and we don't reintroduce something else that you don't necessarily know. If you have a dependency on something, then sometimes that can have an effect, ripple effect down the way. So we want to make sure that things don't get worse, they get better. So that's the reason for the extra process at this point. And it can be it can add a little delay, but I mean, again, there's a reason for it. It needs to be quality.
Yep.
Now, I've been testing the mainline Ubuntu for quite some time, but the only major problem I see is the lack of deb file support in the GUI. Because and Alan Pope says that's a bug, so hopefully they get that fixed before release, because that could be a major.
In the software center.
Yeah, in the Snap software store that they've created instead of GNOME. Yeah, and if they're going to be taking that out, then they need to make sure that you have that built in, but either by GDebi or something, because that can be a major problem, because not everyone's going to know how to go into the terminal and install a deb package that way.
No, I think there's a fix coming for that.
Yeah, I think so too, but.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to shift topics a little bit.
Sure.
I don't know if this has happened to everyone else, but I love Linux. I use it on my desktop. It's my absolute favorite operating system, if I have to, term it as such. But my zeal for distro hopping, for just totally burying myself in nothing but Linux, I have to say, has waned quite a lot recently. I think some of that is just because I was so heavily engaged in just following, 20 different communities and every distro and every, piece of news. But it started with, I had no interest in distro hopping. I'm on the system I'm on, and I'm happy with it. And I just want to get stuff done. Also, partially because I've had a lot of work in the last few weeks. And so when things aren't working, they kind of bother me more now than they might otherwise. but just in general, I find myself kind of, I don't know, that enthusiasm that I normally have. And this, again, could be me, but do you go through periods where you just want to do nothing but, check out every cool thing on Linux, and then you just kind of say, all right, I have to stop,
I think for me, it goes in spurts. It's to the point where, again, like I go back to Pop! OS is the main machine, and I don't even want to touch that. I don't even want to install any extra extensions or anything else, because I just want it to work. But this time of year, like when the Ubuntu's come out, is when you kind of get, and there's all this buzz around and everybody's talking about it. I think for me is a time where I get into wanting to try all of this stuff. But there are times, many times, that I just get to the point like you're talking about, where I don't need to try all of this stuff. Barbara?
Yeah,
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I've been on Ubuntu for quite a while. And I mean, I'll put something like today when I did the Q4 OS. But basically, on my work machines, I don't want to spend time installing stuff, getting it to work, tweaking it the way I want. No, I want to get my work done. And I mean, I know what's out there. I know what I can do. And there are all sorts of cool features, but do I really need it? No. Am I ever going to use it? I've ended up installing software that I never go back to using. And it's the same thing. I mean, I will install software more so than hop from distro to distro. And
I think what happens, so you mentioned installing the software. When I realize I'm spending more time just doing what essentially amounts to nothing, because there's no point to it.
Yeah, it's not productive.
After a while, I start to feel this sense of what am I doing?
I'm right there.
I know exactly what you mean. And that's why, everybody likes to tease me that I don't distro hop, but I would rather do other things with my time and my computer. I have a lot of other things I want to do. I don't want to sit there and spend 2 hours just tweaking it.
Well, I mean, the fact that we're all interested in distros of Linux, right? That's odd, right? I mean, I first got introduced with Linux back in 1994, and I'm right there with you, Eric. I've gone through periods of being odd and being very, very interested, and especially when I first discovered Linux, that was back in Slackware 2.0. It was the most amazing. I was just so excited. It was amazing, and I will never get that feeling back. But I think it is important to take a break, so that, and I mean, I don't mean take a break from Linux, of course, but taking a break from a hobby standpoint of being so involved in looking at distros and the depths of the operating system itself, and take a break from it, go do some other things. And then a few months later, you're going to have a fresh look at it again. It's been that way for me all these years.
Now,
I'm just glad that we've reached the point where we have the first world problem of if we get tired of the hopping, we can just settle into a distro and everything will just work.
Yep.
Yep.
I've been going through the same thing as you, Eric, the last few weeks. Because my videos, I do a lot of research and I try to make them as accurate as possible. But, you come home, you're tired. I'm not getting any younger. You're tired and you just think, I'm just switching off, because it can become overwhelming sometimes and just too much. So I think it's better to not do something rather than do something that's just looks like you've made no effort at all. So, so that I still manage to make videos, but my research hasn't been as much as what it normally is. So it can get to that point. I think you just need to take a break. I think you need to do that.
Yeah.
I'm getting in the situation you are too, Eric, because for the last, I don't know how many distros we've done, I've hopped from one to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. That includes moving a whole home folder and organizing my software so it can just all move with the home folder. And I finally stopped on Linux Mint Debian Edition Debbie because I kind of really like it. And
Yeah.
This is where I'm going to
Mhm.
stay for a while.
And I don't, I do not want to be a downer, because I'm not saying that I don't truly appreciate Linux. And again, I will never use a desktop operating system that isn't related to Linux. It's the best tool for me to get my work done, and it is what I'm using. It's the fascination, right? It's the whole like sort of continuous need to touch and tweak and just leave it.
Yeah, well, it's like I get my vicarious hopping thrill when I listen to other people, because then I can go, oh, okay, that definitely wouldn't be for me, whatever. I'm glad I didn't waste my time. It doesn't mean that I'm not interested in what some other distros are doing. I know exactly what you mean. And you guys, some guys here have teased me now for what, 2-3 years.
We still love
and
you, Barb.
I know. And yeah, but it's like, why do there's so much more that we can utilize and do than just sit there and, like Dan Kelly said, you try this distro, you try this distro. And then, I mean, no, I've had it with that. I guess I'm getting too old and cranky to actually do it myself. I just watch vicariously.
I think
Okay.
Vince. I
Some
think
of these
Vince might.
applications.
Sorry.
So some of these applications must be wondering, how many times can this guy log into here? I mean,
yeah, like Steam. Every time you've
got to
all your
re-log
games,
into.
Yeah.
I think Vince has some sage wisdom for me.
I think she calls first.
Oh, okay.
Oh goodness, no pressure. I don't know. I'll have you guys know, in the past week, I've installed Arch, OpenSUSE, Fedora, all of the Ubuntu flavors multiple times, Debian twice, 2 different Fedora spins, and then the Fedora beta, and also Q4OS. So yeah, it's a problem.
an extreme hopper.
I was thinking I had tried almost as many, but you definitely got me beat by 2 or 3. I
It's
think.
yeah, and it's weird because I haven't done anything like and Manjaro. Sorry, I can't leave that out. I haven't done anything like that in like a few years, actually, because I've mostly been on either one distro or just I slowly jump to another one.
So do you get tired of it?
That's the thing. I'm exhausted. But it's so fun.
I'm a distro hopper now, so I get it.
I hear Michael.
Now and then you just got to stop and catch up on your content that you quit watching a long time ago and wonder, man, I'm not watching YouTube videos anymore. Wonder why.
Yeah, Dan,
Yeah,
there
that's
is
true.
just too much content out there to watch and listen to. I mean, we got so much great stuff, so many different great podcasts, so many different great video guys making stuff on YouTube. Yeah.
I hear fake news from page 2 there.
Go ahead, Vince.
I think it was so funny that that Michael waited until the whole first page was filled up, and then he joined on the second page, so he wouldn't notice and just piped in. But what I wanted to say was, I was never a distro hopper until I joined BDLL.
It's our fault. You're blaming
for a whole
us, right?
year, because I mean, I'm relatively new at this, and the reason why I joined BDLL was because of the curiosity that I had, and I felt like I was just a bucket that I needed to fill up with knowledge. But for a whole year prior to joining BDLL, I only used one distro, and now I'm loving trying all the distros, and I'm jumping in there. I actually wish I had more time to actually spend testing all the Ubuntu's out during testing week and trying out more distros. So I'm in the opposite boat, probably because I've only been in this a couple of years, and maybe in a few more years, I might end up, jaded like you guys. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Rocco is not the cure for hopping. He is the ultimate enabler.
Yeah,
We are all
and that is
enablers.
exactly why I'm here.
Yes, Rocco is
Rocco's
enabler.
When you hop out the window, you know you got a problem.
Rocco is the catalyst.
Mm-hmm. It's all my fault. You can blame me. It's always my fault. You can go ahead and blame me. It's okay.
Well, I know I mean, what Dan does is just like, to me, insane. I mean, I got my testing laptop and that's about it. And I'll test, but I don't hop, my main distro has always been Peppermint and I don't change. I don't feel like I have a need to. It's always interesting to see what's out there, but I'm in the same boat now. Whether it was because I was on like a good 6-week leave and I was doing some material and that, now I'm back at work with all this mess going on, and I'm just tired when I come home. It's just like, forget about it.
I do hop on my main system every 3, 4, 5 months or something like that, because it really, there's nothing better than to try a distro for that long to really get a feel of how it works, because you can install a distro, you can try it, you can say it's great. But when you're really getting into the nitty gritty of things and you're doing your video editing and you're using your everyday things, you really get to know the ins and outs of a distro, and you know, it's not as good as what you probably first thought. So it's,
well, I would compare it to like the desktop environments, Eric, where, you know, you said I don't want to try all of these. I spend so much time setting it up and trying all this stuff. It was the same scenario for me with KDE. If I'm on a KDE distribution, I am going to be spending way too much time trying to maneuver things and change things around. I install Pop! OS or regular Ubuntu, and I don't need to change anything. Part of that is because you can't change as much. But the idea is it puts you in that spot where I'm comfortable with it. I don't have to change it. And that's kind of refreshing when you get to a point where you can install a distro and you can use it right out of the box. Like, you know, so minimal of a setup that, yeah, I don't disagree with you.
But Rocco,
I agree.
Do you use single click on Pop! OS?
Actually, I do, Michael. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, that means you had to change something. Boom, got him.
I said minimal.
She didn't say
I know.
not
Thank you,
change.
Barb.
He
I'm
said
just saying. Okay, fine, but that's not a minimal thing. That's
You're going off the screen.
Yes, it is.
Sorry.
Okay.
Penguin.
Again, they do wear out, man.
Hashtag save the mice, Dan. Just saying. Penguin, go ahead.
Okay, as far as distro hopping goes, I love tinkering with stuff, and I love going through and seeing what other distros are doing. But the thing is, with me, I've gotten to a point where it doesn't matter what distro I'm running. I can make it run just like anything I want. I can make it look the same way. It doesn't matter whether it's KDE, GNOME, or something. I don't like the distro. I don't like the desktop environment. I can just change that out real quick. The thing is, the only thing about distros is it is a starting point. And the thing is, you can build whatever you're doing. But the thing is, I like just looking at what other developers' visions are. And that's why I necessarily do it. Now, my main machine stays the same unless I do something to really screw it up and I wipe it. Then I might change the distro at that point. But I mean, I've got 2 other laptops that I hop on all the time. But the thing is Linux to me. I'm like, the only thing that really matters is the package management and the update cycle and what desktop environment you start with. That's the only thing that's different, at least on the surface, at least.
All right, we got a couple people with hands up, so this ought to be fun. Dave, go ahead. Start out.
I was just going to ask for your guys' opinion because, yeah, I have my testing laptop, but in my rain rig, I have an icy dock, and I keep, half a dozen or so SSDs around with different distros and operating systems on it that I just swap out the drives. Is that really distro hopping when, I've got half a dozen just sitting here and I just flip them in and out?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You have a problem, Dave.
Accelerated.
You have a bottle of liquor in your drawer.
You've got a big problem.
I mean, it's literally 30 seconds for me. Shut down the machine, pop one out, pop one in, turn on the machine, and I'm in another distro.
Yeah, that's called enabling.
That's
Yep.
yeah.
You have perfected that.
Curious, severe distro hopping.
Yeah.
There's a 12-step program for that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I only have 6 drawers in my icy dock.
Problem.
I'm surprised you don't have a second one.
I'm working on it. I have the SATA connectors at the moment on my motherboard. I have to get a PCI SATA connector.
Yeah, I ran out of SATA connectors too.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, me too.
Bill, go ahead.
So I just wanted to kind of point out what Eric was saying. One of the things I found is just staying on a main distro, you're going to find little bugs and little warts and little nicks and knacks that bother you. But when you hop, you don't necessarily find ways to solve them. And then when you come to an issue on that distro that you hop to, you're just going to hop again. And the little bug that you found, it probably can be fixed. And if you stay, I'm not trying to say that distro hopping is bad, but the longer that you stick on something that you use and you learn its ins and outs, like Chicken just mentioned the Magnus viewer that came in, and there's a lot of stuff. There's this whole level of keyboard shortcuts that are Mate related that if you jumped to Ubuntu, you would never know. And I think that we're better off as a group if we find something that works for us. I don't think there's one distro or one DE, but when you find something that does most of what you want, you should probably settle down there and start working on getting your workflow into that.
So you're saying everyone should use Arch?
I didn't say that, by the way.
No.
I think the other advantage of what Bill's talking about too is if you come across problems in a distro you're testing and then you decide you're going to jump to another one, you're going to have that kind of love at first sight syndrome, and maybe not see the issues initially, but then as you get into it, you're going to find issues with that one, and you jump again, you're going to find issues with that one. So I agree. Learning to fix the issues in one that you're stably using is important. It'll help you with every distro.
I think there's a balance because there are some issues that you can't fix. Like there will be some workflows that maybe you need something specific that you can't do anything about. Like take, for example, and just off the top of my head, where before with GNOME with the system trays, where they didn't have the notifier in there. So you lost your system tray. That's something that you're not going to be able to work around if you depend on a system tray for applications. So if you hop to a GNOME distribution, then when that happened, you'd be pretty upset. And even though you'd want to stick with it, that's not something you can personally fix. So then you hop to another one, and you might find a similar issue on that distribution. So it's a little bit of learning to work with the distro you're trying, but also a balance of these are deal breakers I can't live without, and these are things I can live with. Because you're right, you're always going to find something wrong with whatever you're trying. Thomas, go ahead.
So I honestly haven't been a distro hopper since the first year I started Linux.
Fake news.
Oh, really? Really? You want to bet? You'll see. But yeah, I haven't been a distro hopper since. I don't consider myself a distro hopper. How about that? Since the first year I was using Linux. Now, that one VM that I used to test all these distros that we do will heavily disagree. But I haven't really hopped on hardware except for like 4 times in my entire Linux life, I guess you could call it. And that's honestly because I know what I want, I know what I like, and I know where to get it. That being said, it's not like I can't go somewhere else and use a different distro and get what I want. That being said, the one exception to that is Solus. I can't have XFCE on Solus without compiling XFCE myself, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to screw around with that if I don't have to.
I want to give you good news. There is a third-party repo that has XFCE in it, and Justin, that used to work with Solus, actually helps with that project a lot. So you might be able to get XFCE on Solus.
I've heard about this, but I couldn't find instructions on how to do this, and I imagine
I will get them for you.
I appreciate that. I would love to see this. The point being, I agree with Penguin in that a distro is a starting point. I can use basically anything, but I'm an advanced user. You know, I can go in and I can do almost anything I want to do from the command line. Not everybody can do that. I can't go to my mother's laptop over there, chuck on Arch, not configure anything and think she'll be perfectly fine. No, I'll be
I mean,
yelled
not with
at.
that attitude.
I don't know about that. But the point of it is, yes, you can use basically anything. Yes, there's a starting point, but at the same time, I enjoy that configuration process. It's just I don't have the time for it. I need to be able to start something up and get to work right then and there. And I can't do that on everything because a lot of distros, I'm going to boot up, and even though it's configured perfectly for what I'm going to want a tinker. And I can't do that because I'm ADD. I'm going to start tinkering. I'm going to be tinkering for the next 5 hours, and I'm going to look back, and it's going to be 4 a.m. and be like, oh, dang, I was supposed to add that feature today to that program, and I didn't do it because I was, changing a GTK theme or something like that.
Well, I
Why
made
do you
that
think I
point.
don't make a distro? I just enjoy them.
Yeah.
Well, I made that point earlier about the balance, and you're always going to find something. And then, of course, TDA in chat says, if a Linux distro worked perfectly out of the box, you'd get bored and distro hop to find something. I think that's like a perfect scenario. Like that is something that I have already done.
Yes, I think many times.
I have been bored on distros and just hopped because I was bored on it. So,
and there's times where like everything's perfect except for these 4 pixels. Got to switch.
That's a great call out. Michael, you have your hand up for some reason. I don't know why, but
because I was being somewhat polite at some point, maybe, and then decided to barge in anyway because that's what I do. It makes sense, right? I was just saying that I was going to say that my. I agree with Dave in the terms of like having multiple like when I, as a joke, I would argue with Dave and saying that, yeah, you're a distro hopper, but at the same time, I do the same thing and I don't consider myself a distro hopper. And that's also because I have these drives so that I can mess with them and then boot into them and play with stuff on hardware because I don't think virtual machines are really a genuine test. So having this ability to do the switching back and forth makes it a lot more, I guess, more fun in terms of like really fully testing how far it can go. And then at the same time, I always go back to the same I already had, so I keep it for testing and then switch to the main one. So there's like 95% of the time I'm on one and every once in a while I'll do the other thing. Although I did distro hop so far, this is my 2nd week on Manjaro. So this is, I guess it's in the twilight area where it's still, new things, but I did find a bunch of stuff to fix. But that's also because I'm very critical, and they were actually they were open to listening to me, and I've already sent them stuff, and they've already changed things. So now they're just getting more and more.
Hey, Michael, I don't think distro hopping is changing once every 5 years.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not a distro hopper. I just distro hopped this one time. 5 years after the first time I did. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Well, let's talk to somebody who loves the distro hop. Tony, you install all of our distro challenges before we even announce them sometimes. Do you ever get tired of it?
Yes. Recently, I have got fed up, especially being locked down and with nothing else to do. I've changed the distro on the main machine about 20 times this week without exaggerating. Going back to try something, I thought, oh yeah, that's why I didn't run that, because of this, and I'd forgotten and I should make notes. And I keep coming back to 1904 Ubuntu, the standard one, because my machine likes it, everything works, and I've got literally zero niggles with it. But then I get bored with it because nothing's not working properly. I don't see a distorted icon. I think, well, perhaps I should try something else. And yeah, it does. It gets to you. I see where Eric's coming from. It does drive you up the wall a bit sometimes. Sometimes I wish we only had one choice, like with Mac or Windows.
I will say,
that way you'd do it, you'd fit it, and then you'd leave it alone.
Yeah, I've had that thought, Tony. Where ignorance is bliss in some cases, and maybe it's like if I didn't know I could do all this stuff, then it would just be easier because to Thomas's point, it's not ADD for me, it's procrastination. And if I have things that I need to do, I will always find the things I don't need to do. And hours later, here I am going, why didn't I do the thing I needed to do? And, but yeah, I guess I wouldn't say I wouldn't want to run Linux because I know the alternatives. But to your point, I do the same thing. I will wipe something, install, and then 4 rounds later, I'm back on the thing I wiped four times ago. And it's like, what am I doing? It's crazy,
See,
So,
I don't consider myself a distro hopper since I always wind up back on Debian.
yeah.
I might spend a day or two with something else, get fed up, and go right back to Debian, where I'm nice and comfy. So to me, that's not really distro hopping.
To me, that's denial, Esnix.
It is. That's definitely distro hopping. I do the same thing.
I do want to say one final thing, and we can move on from this if we want to. Love it or hate it, Ubuntu has always been my safe harbor. It is the place that I know that it will work for me, and it's usually has the same defaults for me. I know if I install it, it's going to just work. And honestly, in times like this where this isn't the first time this has happened to me, and it won't be the last, I'm sure. I tend to get obsessive and then I burn myself out. But Ubuntu has always been that place for me. And no matter what your opinion of it is, personally, this is why I am such an unabashed fanboy for Ubuntu, because for 15 years now, it's always that place that I can go.
It's Linux for human beings.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that
I
there's
agree
plenty
with
of
you,
people
Eric.
that want to get in yet, so we're going to continue the conversation. So, Simon, you've had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Tony touched on a point I was going to make, actually. I think even for guys like us, I think it can be a little overwhelming just how much choice there is and how many things there are to test and to try. Because let's face it, Windows 10 is Windows 10, Mac OS is Mac OS. But when you get into Linux, you have your Ubuntu flavors, and you've got Arch, and you've got Arch based, and the list goes on. And then you've got 1,000,001 desktop environments. I think in some cases, you can be just sort of rehashing some of the same stuff. I've already tried Debian 10.2 Buster with KDE, so like testing Q4OS Plasma Edition was no different for me, for example. The way I get around this is, I've been messing around with Linux like consistently, sort of on a weekly basis since October. I do most of my stuff in virtual machines because at the end of the day, I need a stable base system, and I'm a Mac user and have been for the last 6 years. I work with music, and a lot of the stuff that I use, I need the Mac to run that stuff. Unfortunately, although it's getting better, the audio side of Linux just isn't quite 100% there yet for me to fully make the switch. I would love for the day to come when that does happen, but it's not there yet, so I need a stable base. So doing this in VMs is a great way to test things and not have to worry about whether I break it or not. I can do some of the most ridiculous things, and it doesn't matter, because before I do those ridiculous things, I can just clone the VM, and I know I can go back to a working virtual machine. Or if I get really frustrated with messing around with an environment, I can just turn it off, and I've still got my base system, and I can still get my work done. I can still do everything that I need to do. That said, I do have 2 other machines that do run Linux on the Metal. One of them is a netbook, and that runs MX Linux, and the other one, Dual Boots Peppermint, and now Q4OS. I don't really have the desire to change anything on those machines because they both work great, even though they're yonks old. The performance on them is fantastic. So I think I just want to leave those be. But that's how I get around it. I just do it in the VMs, so I keep my stable base, but I get to have fun, and I get to test things and join in the discussion with you guys. And that's what it's about for me. It's about Linux is my fun time computing. It's not my work time computing.
Well, I think that goes to a certain point where it becomes a job after a while. testing all this stuff and setting it all up, it feels like it becomes work, and that's where we get burned out a little bit, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I also want to point out one thing that I think I might have said it weirdly where I said it. My intent was to say that the virtual machine testing is not necessarily a bad thing. I meant full testing, so like you get the full experience of it, but it's still testing. I don't know if I said real testing or not, but just to clarify that virtual machines are still a very valid thing that people should absolutely use depending on they're doing their work base. And also Mac OS, that's like a cousin for Linux, so that's okay.
Well, I think testing in a virtual machine offers different opinions, so you can test different things.
True.
One, your distro should probably be able to work in a virtual machine, and some have trouble with it. And
Very
two,
true.
it's just it gives you the different experience. It's not going to give you the whole experience, but it gives you a different experience.
I guess that's a good point, and also maybe in a way that if someone who's intending to use it in the virtual machine anyway, they might as well do it that way because that's what they're gonna continue to use it in that way. So using it as a test makes sense.
All right, Electron.
Yeah, I was just gonna. One of the ways that I've dealt with the distribution burnout is to enjoy Linux for one of the reasons why I was attracted to it to begin with, way back when, and that's the other things you can do with it and focus on that. And maybe desktop environments is an obvious one. You can change desktop environments without going to another distribution, but you can also change a lot of other things. You can change your shell and learn a new shell. You can focus on learning some applications that you're not used to using. And Linux is a great development environment. You may not be a programmer at all, but learn a programming language. And if you are a programmer, learn one you don't know, because the environment's there for you to do that very easily. And that's the way I've gotten around of, when I'm not focused on what's new and great in the next version of the distro or somebody else's distro. I'm focused on what does Linux bring to me and how can I enjoy it in those ways.
Yep. Colin.
Yeah, I was just going to say that for me now, I've got to the point where I'm a main system, like I'm running Ferron OS at the moment with the Plasma. And for me, Plasma's not for me. From running more than 3 months now, it's definitely not an environment that I want to use.
How dare you?
But I like Plasma, but it just, for me, it's not for me. I've lost my mic a few times through dealing with settings and stuff and sound. I just can't deal with the sound, the way the sound works on Plasma and all that. I've tried to work with it, but I just find I'm fighting with it. So that for me just cuts that out, and then I can look at another desktop environment. And pretty much for me, it's GTK based most times, I think. So I think it's a process of elimination as well. Try to eliminate and work with something for a while to absolutely make sure that, no, that's not for me. And that's where I'm at the moment. I enjoy making my videos and looking at all new stuff, no doubt about that. But as far as your main system goes, that's what I'm doing now. I'm just going to test something for a few months and say, no, it's not for me, and bang, move on. So, and make sure that I know exactly what I want.
Big Pod, go ahead. Are you still muted, dude? Or because we can't?
Yeah, he's muted. He's muted.
I don't.
Am I
think
muted now?
There you go.
You're good now.
Okay, I had a hardware kill switch for Mike. I want to say that I wasn't actually distro hopper a lot before I joined here. When I started using Linux.
Jeez, Rocco, what are you doing to people?
Why are you always blaming me, dude? No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When I started using Linux, in a month-to-month period, I went in a virtual machine. I went probably through 50, if not more, distros, trying everything. I know I installed Arch about 30 to 40 times, and it was a big time for me in Linux. But since then, if it isn't for this show, I mainly don't install anything else, because if I do, I would install it in VM or on my laptop, and anytime I try to change my daily driver, in about week or two, I was back on Arch. So I just stopped. No point in doing something futile.
All right, Michael, you want to get something? What is that? Was your hand up
Yeah.
from before?
Well, two things. One, I like this hand raising thing, so I wanted to say that. Two, I also want to talk to Colin, and it could be after the show or whatever, but I wanted to talk to you about the plasma thing because I'm curious about what your problems are outside of the whole jokey thing of how dare you. And three, of it's funny because the distro hopping thing, I'm known for being the antithesis of that, but I was in the beginning. It's just been 20 years. So my getting tired of distro hopping was like 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I don't know. It was a long time ago. So I used to do it all the time, and I installed everything at one point. And once I just got tired of it, I just never bothered to switch. And I would still test things, but I just never switched because it was like, I got everything set to what I want. Don't break.
Right.
Just don't break.
Paul, are you going to accuse us of being you're the problem of distro hopping?
No, I've been running OpenSUSE for over 8 months now. It's been running great. I enjoy living in it. I do hop a little bit on my Raspberry Pi and a couple laptops that I have, but that's about it. I've been using mainly OpenSUSE. Love it.
Paul, does it come down to just familiarity now? Like you've lived in it long enough that you're just like, okay, I want to do this thing. I know how to do it. I'm just going to do it. And
right. Yeah. It's a great feeling. I mean, a year and a half ago, I wouldn't, I was hop. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. We're running out of time, but anybody else want to get in? Steven, are you a distro hopper dude or what?
Not really. I'm kind of boring like Esnix. If I'm going to go back to Debian anyway, I might as well just stay on Debian. So I just kind of go with VMs when it comes to testing and distro challenges and whatnot. But yeah, just Debian for me.
Michael, don't ever use the hand.
What? Just because I use it over and over? It's
yeah. All right. Anybody else want to get in on the distro hopping before we end it because we're running out of time?
Just really quickly, I wanted to say that even though I do most of my testing in VMs, my list of VMs isn't that big, honestly. A lot of them don't stay around, and I've whittled it down to pretty much just 2 Ubuntu-based and 2 Arch-based. So I have Arco and Arch Labs, and then I have Elementary and Ubuntu, and that's it. And they're the ones that I enjoy booting up and messing with the most.
Nice. All right. We're out of time. It was an awesome discussion. Eric, I don't know if it got to the point you wanted it to, but it was an awesome discussion.
It helps to hear other people say that they've hit that point too. Tone, I think for what it's worth, and I appreciate everybody's feedback, but hearing from Tony, that was probably the most real to me because that round robin approach where it's almost like manic in a way, and so hearing from someone like Tony and everybody, like I said, I mean, it's a weird situation to be in, to have so much passion for something and then suddenly just hit a wall, and I guess it scares me a little bit.
Well, but see, I don't think that's weird. I don't think
Yeah.
any of us consider that weird. I think we all feel the same thing at certain times. We just don't all feel it at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough. Well, thank you for indulging
All right.
me. I appreciate it.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. We are going to continue trying Q4OS for the next week. I do want to thank the developers for their work that they put into it, because without that happening, we would have one less distro to pick and choose and look at and talk about. It would give us less things to talk about. So I appreciate it. But everybody gets the last word. Dan Simmons, last word.
Thanks, Rocco. As always, excellent show. Great to be here with everyone and be connected in these times. So appreciate that. going to disagree with you just a little bit, Rocco. I'm not a super big fan of that theme change. I kind of like the way they had it. I'm just saying. Anyway, have a great week, everyone.
Yep. I just enjoy it because it's nostalgic. I love it. Eric, last word.
Well, as always, thanks everybody for being here and letting me, have my say and hear the feedback. I'm genuinely happy to continue to see all of your faces on here because I know several people now that have had some health issues related to the current situation, and so seeing you lets me know that you're all okay, and that makes me feel good. And hopefully, I will see you all again next week.
All right, Peter.
First of all, shout out to our new Frenchman, number 13 from Gene. I probably butchered how you pronounce that name, but he's the one that coined me the food bank guy. So if all thanks go to him. I love the name, so I may keep it for a little while. But I am the food bank guy. Thanks for supporting our food banks. Hopefully I'm not linking Feed America or .org too much, but please help us.
It's fine, brother. Penguin, last word.
Well, thanks for having this show. I want to say thanks to all the community, etc. And I'm going to say something controversial. Real distros use System D.
Tony, last word.
And the distro hopper's number is 0800. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Right.
Oh, you got to finish that number.
Yeah, next week. Rocco, thanks for doing this again. I've really enjoyed it this week. I've been stuck indoors for 4 weeks now. I had a bit of a meltdown with it all yesterday. Got really fed up. So I was looking forward to the double portion today, and it really does help to lift spirits. Not just for me, I'm sure there's a lot of other people in the same boat. So it's really good that you do it. And take care, everyone, till next week. And I look forward to joining you all again in a week's time.
Well, I enjoy it just as much as you do, Tony. So I appreciate you being here. All right, Dave, last word.
Thank you, Rocco and crew, for keeping this place up and running and giving us a place to hide and recuperate and regenerate. Thank you to the devs of Q4OS for a good, solid distro. I'm sorry it's not for me, but it is good. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week.
Dan Kelly.
Thanks, Rocco, for putting on the show, and thanks to all the helpers that help you make this possible. Everybody be safe, keep your distance outdoors, and thank the people at Q4OS for putting on this distro. Even though it doesn't work great for me, I can see it works great for some of you other people. As for distro hopping, you can distro hop, just keep the main distro you want to use all the time on a separate drive, just in case.
All right. Electron, last word.
Thanks, Rocco and company. It's been another great week. Really enjoyed it. I think hopefully everyone stays safe, but keep in mind also look after your mental health. I've had to get out and just make myself get out, take breaks, and get some sun. And it just seems like everybody may be a little bit down, which is understandable, but get out and get some sunshine. Of course, staying away from other people.
Yep. Simon, last word.
Thank you very much for the stream, Rocco. Thank you to everybody else on Zoom and in the chats. You guys are a great and wonderful community. I'm looking forward to catching up on BDLL Europe because I missed that earlier because I was over on Penguin's stream and supporting Penguin with his attempt to install Arch Linux. And I want everyone to stay safe and have a great week.
All right. Thomas?
Well, thank you for having the stream again this week. It was a lot of fun. I guess only thing I have to say is 1, wash your hands. 2, 6 feet apart, everyone. And 3, stay home. I don't want anyone getting this stupid virus. Have a good one otherwise.
All right, Barbara, last word.
Okay. Thank you, Rocco, for the stream. And I agree with everybody who said it. This is, since we're all kind of like very cooped up, and yes, I can walk outside and I'm not going to see anybody because I live in the boondocks of New York State. No, I don't. Dan does. Simmons, he does. It's just, this was just great to be able to talk with people and see people and whatever. But I also agree with what Thomas said. 1, wash your hands. 2, 6 feet or 2 meters apart if you don't live in the US. And 3, wear a mask when you go out. I mean, it's like, and 4, I want to see everybody here next week.
Agreed. Bill, last word. Bill. Earth to Bill. Okay. Excellent. Last word, brother.
Thanks again for another great stream. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
No, I'm totally incompetent on technology, apparently. So I wanted to say thank you to Rocco and Dan and Eric for doing everything today, and Zeb for earlier. I just want everyone to think about one thing. Take 5 minutes and find an app that you like, that someone makes. Go find the name of some of that person. Go to GitLab, GitHub, find their name, send them a note, say thanks.
Yep. Agreed. All right, X. Last word.
Cool. Thank you again for a great stream. I really appreciate it. And mad props again out to MX and Antix Linux.
Nice. Larry, sir. Last word.
Thank you, Rocco, Dan, Eric. I appreciate it. Bill and Dan, thank you for your work on Ubuntu. Really appreciate that. Thomas, same to you on your developer. I appreciate that. Any developers, you guys rock. And thank you for having me. And Peter, food bank guy, lead us sign.
All right, Vince.
Yeah, thank you as well, Rocco, Dan, Eric, Bill, and yeah, Zeb, who was on Euro earlier. I consider you guys my online lug, friends, family, support group. So I'll leave you with this message. If symptoms persist, please consult Dr. Eric.
Steven, last word.
Thanks, Rocco, and thanks, guys. I appreciate it. See you guys next week.
Dave.
Thanks, Rocco. Everybody else, it's great seeing you all. I really enjoy this and being here every week, and I look forward to next week.
Dale, last word.
There we go. Thank you for everything you do, Rocco, and everybody involved, and Dan, to provide us this forum that we can all get together on. And everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and also don't, oh, it's late, my brain's rebooting here just a second. Don't, oh well, all I was going to say is don't, okay, 46 years old and it's all downhill.
I do the same thing, dude. Don't worry about it.
I turned 46 last month, but don't underestimate the power and fun of trying different DEs. Spin up a Debian and just try Window Maker. You can try Black Box, all the other i3, awesome. And I appreciate all the content creators that are on the call tonight for all you do. It's much appreciated, and all the distro maintainers. So good night.
Nice. Big Pod, last word.
Thankfully, life for me hasn't changed much. I am the prototype of the guy who you find in all the memes about the current situation. The computer guy before and after in the same picture. That's me, basically. Technically, or thankfully, I can go outside. I live in a village. I have a forest like 100 meters away from me, so I can go walk. And otherwise, hopefully we're all safe, even though we're not really, no one can be really sure unless he's tested. But at least try to protect yourself. Have a good night, day, and see you next time.
All right. Chicken.
Hi there.
Oh
How's
my
it
gosh.
going?
Oh my gosh.
But no,
Look, it's
seriously.
Mad Max.
Thank you, Rocco, for all you do. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you, everybody, for testing. And this is Bartholomew. Good night.
Esnick's last word.
Well, thank you, Rocco et al. Always a good discussion. I was glad I caught the Europe group earlier in the day. Everyone take care, and hopefully I'll see you all next week.
All right, Colin.
I'd like to thank Rocco for my distro hopping ways, according to the discussions tonight.
You're killing me, dude.
Anyway, Rock and Co, thanks very much for the stream. It's always good. Hopefully I get a chance to have a look at Q4OS a little bit more this week. Stay healthy, stay safe, and see you all next week.
Steve.
All right, everybody. Thanks again, Rocco. It's great to see everybody. Hope everybody takes care. If you want to be on another stream about 10 hours, I'll be on at 8 o'clock Central Time tomorrow, so come join me.
Nice. Paul, last word.
Yeah, update your patches and scrub your back ports.
There you go. Get that, Michael? Last word, Michael.
So everybody need to wash your homes and stay hands.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
That was a great last word. Joe, last word.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for letting me in this late in the game today. I did peek in on Euro earlier. Wind up is I'm fortunate enough with being able to spend time with my grandkids, even though in this time we're living in, because we have been kind of in the same areas together because they live next door, and so we've been fortunate that way. And then they did coloring eggs tonight, and then so the alarm went off. And of course, it had to go off again right at 9 o'clock, just as you let me in here. So that was, I don't know if you heard it or not. So anyway, yeah, I wanted to come in and just say a quick hello to everybody. And I hope everybody's staying well and safe. And yeah, whoever said it earlier too, you really do have to kind of try to keep your mental health going too. It's really hard to do in these times with everything we're dealing with. But I think what it comes down to is things like this, or things you enjoy, or things that give you happiness. That's what you got to concentrate on, not the things that are putting us here, but the things that do give you joy in your life. And this is one of them. That's why even if it's for 5 minutes or 5 hours, depending on both biddles today or whatever, doesn't matter. If you can get a little bit of happiness, that's what this group is. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all you do, and everybody that chips in to help with this. And the other thing is I love our UK guys, but they're I told them last night, you're brutal on my sleep schedule. I've been watching Zeb and EB and them in their live streams at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's getting a little rough. It screws up my days and nights, but I love it. You guys are all fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Is it Krakow?
Yeah.
How are you?
Fine.
All right. You have a last word for everybody?
Oh, just to sorry for the accent. I'm French, but I just want to say thank you to you all. I really enjoy the moment.
Very nice. Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. MC, welcome to Biddle.
Glad to be here finally.
It is good to have you, brother. You want to say a last word, brother, before we go?
I'm just looking forward to finally getting involved and getting more
more into this week after week, at least until this thing's over and I have to go back to working on Saturday nights.
Well, there you go. All right. Stick around. We have an after show anyway. But that is going to wrap it up for us. My last word for tonight is thank you for all being here and allowing me to enjoy your company. I appreciate it. Linux Spotlight this past week was Tyler Brown, one of our own community members here, and that was an excellent discussion. But next week, next Wednesday at 6 a.m., I sit down with Drew DeVore of Jupiter Broadcasting. He is the audio editing engineer for Jupiter Broadcasting, and he is a co-host for Linux Action News, and not Linux Action News, Linux News Headlines, and he also did do some co-hosting for Linux Action News. But yeah, that is an excellent discussion, and you will find him to be a real, true geek. Just saying, and he's proud of that fact.
Nice.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you all for being here. We will see you next week. But until then, long live Linux.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Penguins.
Say,
Bye, everyone.
Adios.
Bye.